Welcome to the Nevis Newscast for Thursday, January 9th, 2025. I am Bronte Swanston Hendrickson.
In the new year, we promise to continue delivering a better life for our people.
The Honourable Mark Brantley making his New Year address as Premier of Nevis. He called on the Federation's citizens to unite and work together for the common cause of national upliftment.
We will foster a harmonious and inclusive society, one where our people can live happy lives, excel, and realize their fullest potential. This, however, can only be achieved if we individually and collectively play our part in the project of building a peaceful, prosperous, and progressive St. Kitts and Nevis. As one people, with a shared destiny, we are intertwined and connected as members of one Nevisian and Kittitian household. In recent times, there has been a deep erosion of our social values and norms, along with changes to our traditional lifestyles. This has had devastating repercussions on our interpersonal relationships and has caused an increase in antisocial behavior and crime. In the year ahead, I urge us to increase our efforts to improve how we relate to each other. Let us on this day resolve to treat each other with dignity, respect, and in a kinder and gentler manner. Each day, let us demonstrate the qualities of empathy in our speech and actions.
The Premier also made a plea to parents.
I appeal to all parents and guardians to train their children well, guide their development and behavior, accept personal responsibility to ensure that we do not create homes that become nurseries for criminals. To reform our society, we need all of us to play our part. Our parents cannot do it alone. Our teachers cannot do it alone. Our churches cannot do it alone. Civil society cannot do it alone. The government cannot do it alone. All of us must be fully engaged.
Premier of Nevis, the Honourable Mark Brantley. Chief Labour Officer Juliet O'Loughlin addressed the topic of maternity leave on a recent episode of the programme Towards a Better Workplace. She said it was in response to a number of inquiries which have been made at the Department of Labour recently.
An employee shall be entitled to 13 weeks maternity leave. That is to say, at least 2 weeks up to and including the date of her expected confinement, and at least 6 weeks immediately from that date. In the case of an illness medically certified as arising out of the pregnancy or out of confinement, the employee shall be entitled to an additional period of leave not exceeding 3 months. The benefits to be paid to an employee during maternity leave shall be in accordance with the provisions of the Social Security Act administered by the Social Security Office. Where no benefit is payable under the Social Security Act for any period of maternity leave to which an employee is entitled, the employer shall pay the employee benefits in respect of that period of maternity leave at the rate payable under the Social Security Act.
She also discussed the qualifying period of employment for maternity leave.
No employee shall be entitled to maternity leave unless she has worked for the employer from whom she claims such benefit for not less than 154 days within the period of 1 year immediately preceding the date of her confinement. Where a change of employer occurs, service rendered by that employee to the previous employer shall be deemed to be service rendered under the new employer for the purpose of computing the period of employment by virtue of which she may be entitled to maternity leave.
The Chief Labour Officer also advised that employees should not be given notice of termination during maternity leave.
The employment of an employee shall not be terminated by reason only of her pregnancy or confinement or any illness consequent upon her pregnancy or confinement. Where an employer is prosecuted for the offense of acting in contravention of the provisions of same act, the burden of proof will be upon the employer to prove that the employment of the employee was terminated by reason of a fact other than her pregnancy or confinement or any illness consequent upon her pregnancy or confinement.
Chief Labour Officer Juliet O'Loughlin. Still to come.
It is only fair that as individuals and business entities seek to benefit from the economic engagement with the government and on the island, that they must pay their share of fees and taxes.
The details after this break. Welcome back. In the fiscal year 2025, the Nevis Island Administration will institute some new revenue measures. Premier and Minister of Finance, the Honourable Mark Brantley, says the intention is to realign the revenue from essential services with the cost of providing them.
These measures include the revision of the fee structures for services offered by our Financial Services Department. We have already held discussions with our service providers, who have been fully notified of our intention to revise the various fees with effect from April 1st, 2025. We have given adequate notice so that they can effectively advise their clients. We intend to marginally increase the rate of property tax charged on residential properties with a market value of EC $2 million and over, from 0.156% to 0.2% of their market value, effective June 1st, 2025. This increase will standardize the rate charged for properties on St. Kitts and thus providing commonality in the rates charged for high-value properties across the Federation. We intend to increase the Tourism and Development Levy from 2% to 3%. We have already held discussions with our hoteliers on this, and restaurateurs, forgive me. This increase will take effect from June 1st, 2025, as we start preparations for the 2025-2026 hotel season, and will provide sufficient time for our hoteliers to adjust their pricing structure to accommodate this increase.
The Ministry of Finance also intends to tighten its existing recovery measures to reduce the accumulation of arrears incurred by government departments.
We urge everyone, Madam President, everybody in this room and all those listening, to be responsible taxpayers and to pay your taxes on time. We have discontinued the practice of granting a waiver of interest and penalties for late payment. We have instead offered installment payment options and expect that persons will undertake the necessary discussions and have suitable installment arrangements put in place and honor those arrangements. It is only fair that as individuals and business entities seek to benefit from the economic engagement with the government and on the island, that they must pay their share of fees and taxes to allow government the resources to further fund the critical programs. We therefore encourage all taxpayers to file and pay their taxes on time. All of us must be responsible citizens. Madam President, we will, however, continue to extend our existing fiscal incentive programs, such as the First-Time Homeowners Program and other programs which are designed to stimulate growth in the construction sector, our program for concessions for startup businesses, along with our program for concessions for entities operating in the tourism sector.
Premier and Minister of Finance, the Honourable Mark Brantley. As declared by Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew, in his 2025 budget address, a value-added tax VAT reduction will be implemented, lowering the standard VAT rate from 17 to 13% for the first 6 months of the year. This new rate will apply to the supply or sale of goods and services that were previously sold at the 17% standard rate. Transactions which occurred before January 1st, 2025 will be subject to the previous rate of 17%. The 10% reduced rate for commercial rentals, accommodation services, and value of supplies by a restaurant will continue to apply. To ensure the intended benefits of this reduction are realized, the government will enforce strict monitoring measures to prevent price gouging and other unfair practices. These efforts will be supported by the Consumer Protection Act and other applicable legislation. For further clarification, contact the Inland Revenue Department in St. Kitts at 465-8485 or in Nevis at 469-5856 or send an email to inlandrevenue@ird.gov.kn or ird@niagov.com. And that's it for this edition of the Nevis Newscast. On behalf of all of us here at the Department of Information, I am Bronte Swanston Hendrickson. Thank you for viewing.